Tell me how you first met Stevie Nicks.
When I was a junior in high school up in Northern California, she transferred into my high school as a senior. She did play guitar, and she and I interacted slightly on a musical level at a couple of social events. And then she moved on and went to college, and I stayed behind and finished high school. And near the end of my senior year, I finally got in a band. And then we graduated from high school, and all of us were going to end up going to the same college that Stevie happened to be at. And I think our drummer said, well, why don't we ask Stevie if she wants to join the band? And so we did, and she did join. That band played around the Bay Area.
And the band, this first band was?
The band was called Fritz.
Fritz.
Yes. We did quite well on a local level, you know. We're doing clubs and, you know, high school dances. And at some point, we got some opening spots for some larger acts, Janis Joplin and a few other people. And all during that time, Stevie and I were not really romantically involved. And then, towards the end of that band being together, we tried to get a deal in Los Angeles and could not generate any interest. But the one thing that happened from that attempt was that people singled out Stevie and myself more than once. And so when Fritz broke up, Stevie and I were looking at each other going, well, what now? And we thought, well, we could try doing a duet. And so at that point, we actually did get romantically involved, and we got musically involved as a duet and worked up in Northern California for a year or so on. I'd never written a song, you know. She wrote, but I didn't. So I said, well, I guess I better try to write. And so we wrote some material and eventually got a deal down in Los Angeles on Polydor and made that one album, Buckingham Nicks album.
Not a bad phase.
No. I mean, you know, that album holds up pretty well. It did not do well commercially, but it certainly was noticed. And more importantly, it was noticed by Mick Fleetwood.
So, that's the next step. Tell me how you came together with Fleetwood Mac.
Well, it was really a crossing of paths in the night. Mick Fleetwood was looking for a studio and had kind of been languishing on the label on Warner Brothers. And I always like to say that Mo Austin, who was the president of Warner Brothers at that time, he was quite a visionary, in my opinion. And in those days, executives had the autonomy to make decisions based on their gut, unlike today. In today's world, there would not have been a Fleetwood Mac for us to join. They would have been off the label because they were not really making any money for Warner Brothers at that time. But Mo Austin had the smarts, the instincts, and more importantly, the autonomy to say, well, there's something interesting here. I'm just going to let the ferment keep going and see what happens. And lo and behold, here's Mick Fleetwood waltzing into Sound City, which was the studio that Stevie and I had done Buckingham Nicks at. And I happened to walk into the main studio when Mick was there, not knowing who he was or that anyone from Fleetwood Mac was there. And I see this giant guy just rocking away to one of the songs on the Buckingham Nicks album, and he's my guitar solo, and so we meet, and okay. Well, a couple of weeks later, Fleetwood Mac's guitarist, Bob Welch, decided he was going to leave the group. So Mick, being a very intuitive guy himself, had been so impressed by my playing, as the story goes anyway, that he sought me out through Keith, called me up, said, Lindsey, would you like to join Fleetwood Mac? Very much out of the blue. And of course, my response was, well, if you take me, you'll have to take my girlfriend too.
And they did.
And they did. Well, I think they consulted with Christine McVie if she was okay with another girl, and she was. And it came together. But it was such a fortuitous thing that could have just as easily never happened. Very nice piece of luck.
Let's talk about the album Rumours. A lot of people considered it at the time, and for that matter since, as the perfect or near perfect album for the times. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most famous rock albums in history. Lots of top 10 hits. What was it really about, Rumours? I'm keeping in mind that one critic called it a flawless record pulled from the wreckage of real lives.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've always been a firm believer that much of the appeal of Rumours went beyond the music itself. That's not to take anything away from the musical accomplishment, but you have to understand that we were 5 people. Stevie and I had been a couple for a long time. John and Christine McVie had been married. So you had these 2 couples. By the time we got up to Sausalito to start recording Rumours, Stevie and I, although not quite as well defined, were estranged, we're not living together. We'd, for all intents and purposes, broken up. John and Christine McVie were divorced. So normally when people break up, when there's pain involved like that, disappointment, heartache, people are allowed a requisite amount of distance and time in order to let the dust settle before they move on. Well, we did not have that luxury. We were, in very close quarters, never had the luxury to be apart, so therefore never really had the luxury of closure. And also you had 3 writers. So Stevie was writing songs, basically dialogues to me. I was basically writing dialogues to her. And Christine McVie was writing dialogues to John. So you could say that what we did beyond the music was really tap into the voyeur in the audience. People really were able to invest in us as people because they could see, and it was very well documented. Thank God it wasn't today where everything is so much more, there's no decorum at all anymore. But, there was nothing to hide. Everyone knew that this was what was being written about. Everyone knew that these songs, the subject matter was what we were living. And I think that there was an investment in not just the music, but in the people who made the music because of that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that you think it became a kind of soft rock novel, maybe a deep soft rock novel.
Mm-hmm. A soap opera, perhaps.
Well, I was trying to raise it a little bit from soap opera.
Well,
you wrote, among other things, Go Your Own Way and Secondhand News. Mm-hmm. What were you saying to Stevie?
Well, I think both of those are basically saying, hey, I'm resigned to whatever happens, but it's a damn shame, and it's not what I want, and that I think that's really about it. Actually, Secondhand News, at least it has a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor in it, because it's basically saying, as a contingency, if you ever get lonely, I'm always willing to proposition you.